All right, good evening, fellow protectors. Welcome to Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Greg LeBuff here with you. Got Dustin Dodery, Brad Vandalite. Depends on when you're listening to this, but for us, this is the final podcast of what is now season 3. So we are just, what is today, December 19th. So we are just going to wrap up this final podcast of the year, and then we will be back in 2025 in January. But things have been busy lately. A lot of training going on, a lot of things going on. It was kind of a bit of a rush to put this one together, but I thought, you know what, it'll be our last one of the year. So let's do one that is based off an analogy. And I just thought this would be a really good analogy for people, and hopefully everyone can get some value out of this. So I titled this one, Add Weight, Don't Take It Off. And like I said, this is an analogy more than it is a concept. But of course, analogies are reflections of concept, strategies, tactics. So I'm going to set up the premise for this. We'll cut to the intro, we'll get back, and we're going to unpack this for everybody. So just as I was actually working today, this analogy kind of hit my head because, and if I'm actually being honest, this happened a couple days ago during one of my privates, and it just kind of kept replaying in my head today. And it was just this discussion I had with one of our clients. And as we were training, and this individual's at level 2, so he's been around for a little bit, he's got his foundation down, and so we're building on top of this foundation. But as we were going through, and I was actually connecting some of what we were working on back to foundational concepts. So this is stuff that, he's already been checklisted on. This is, everything's being built on top of this foundation. And he had a couple very interesting questions. And the long and short of it is, in the moment, I was almost taken back a little bit just for a second, because a lot of what happens foundationally when you start weaponizing people against violence is you have to rewrite their programming, because most men are conditioned to think of defending against violence like facing a fight, like being in a fight. And violence is its own language. Violence has nothing to do with fighting, right? And of course everyone fighting is very conventional, very toe to toe, very like, okay, fuck you, you're going to try and punch me, I'm going to try to punch you, all that kind of shit. And so what happened is, it was a very quick, conversation. It was something that was fairly easy to solve. But like I said, today when I was training, it's just this analogy hit me. And the analogy was, why does everybody always want to add weight? Right? But to the wrong side. Meaning, why does everyone always want to make it harder for themselves? Like, so this concept of add weight, don't take it off, is like, add weight to the fucking bad guy. Why the fuck are you making his job easier? And so much of what we do in training is always trying to share with people and show people how to stop, like fucking add weight to the bad guy. Make it fucking 10 times harder for him. If I'm going into, again, the concept of if I'm in a competition and, who can bench press the most, do you know what I mean? Like, you want to add as much weight as you can to your opponent till he fails. Like, just like stack weight plates on top of this guy and just get him to fail, like burn him out. And so the concept with violence is every single thing that we're doing in the weaponization process is adding weight to the bad guy. Like, just add weight, stack it on him, make shit harder for him. And it's like, yet so many times men are always trying to balance things out. It's like they're trying to equalize it. And it's like, you don't get something here, right? Violent predatory criminals, they don't want to fight. They want to win. They are always trying to stack the deck against us. They're always trying to add the weight to us, make us carry the weight. So when you weaponize people for violence, we're teaching them to do what they do. So it's like, no, fuck them, doom on them. They think evil. They want to make it harder for you. They're going to stack weight on you. You have to reverse that and doom on them, and you have to stack weight onto them. Okay, so this is the kind of analogy and concept that I want to explore tonight. And I just want, you guys to think, obviously I'm going to cut to the intro here, but just think about some different ways that, and what maybe some of your favorite ways that we add weight to the bad guy, right? Don't take weight off him. Don't make his job easier. Fucking add weight to that son of a bitch and make it harder for him. Okay, so anyways, we're going to unpack this back in a few seconds. Hang with us. every day I hear issues, who is free to walk the streets in the same city where I live, work, and where I am raising my 2 daughters. Well, I'm tired of screaming at the TV, and enough is enough. Throughout history, there have always been men willing to answer the call to the threats against our way of life. Well, today, that threat is right outside our doors, on our streets, in our neighborhoods, on our public transportation system, outside the places we work, and even outside of our children's schools. My new mission is to create and train a group of men that believe in the right to life and value the free education of a weaponized man podcast. All right. Okay, so just before the intro, I set up kind of the concept here, which was add weight, don't take it off. And the quick analogy of that was just make sure that you're adding weight to the bad guy, right? Too many guys, again, men are just wired. Most of this is subconscious programming, but they're constantly actually taking weight off the bad guy, meaning making his job fucking easier. And they're always trying to actually, just equalize things. Or they just accept when the bad guy puts weight onto us. So let's just explore this, and maybe give me your guys' visceral thoughts off kind of the analogy that I'm running with here.
I think there's a lot of details that we could look at that shows a very clear, not definition, but a very clear perspective of when you're adding weight to yourself or when you're adding weight to the bad guy. One that kind of jumps out, and this is kind of like a little bit of a broader one, not a very specific one, but one is that came into my mind is social contracts, right? Because we have these social contracts, how we believe it is acceptable to operate in society, but when we're dealing with people with violence, is like those social contracts, like they're kind of like innately programmed, like you said, like we have this programming running that we have to rewire that, and social contracts is one of them, because we think that it's like, well, I can't behave this way because I'm coming off as an asshole. I can't behave this way because I'm coming off as a bitch for a woman and stuff like that. But it's like, no. That is actually what takes the weight off of them and puts the weight on you, is because they know specifically that most people are going to operate in these predefined social contracts and confines that we have, and they're not going to go outside of those. So if you could identify what that is, and you could identify as like, I'm not going to just agree to be in the social contract with you, that actually puts more weight on them, because they have to be the ones, again, doing the work. And it's like, if you want, like, I'm not doing this for you. I'm not just going to agree to be a part of whatever type of environment or situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah. I mean, I'll let Dustin jump in a sec, but I think that's a really good point. Is if you don't understand, because I think like you said it already, and you alluded to it, the social contract is autopiloted in all of us, typically. Like it's running in the subconscious. So we are following and adhering to social contract rules and values without even knowing, to a degree that we're not really even aware of how deeply that's impacting our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, all that stuff. So 100%. If bad guys don't share the same social contract, they don't share the same value system, and we're imprinting that on to everybody around us, that puts us at a massive disadvantage. So it takes weight off them and loads that onto us. So that's a really and like you said, a general one, but very, very big, very, very powerful, right? So that's a really, really good one. Dustin.
Yeah, I just started writing down different things, different ways I like to stack weight on the bad guy, and just looking at it, waiting for the intro to end. I was like, well, it's funny, like pretty much everything I wrote down all falls into the same like category of like just routines. It's like, what are your routines? Like, be hard to kill. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm like, yeah. What are your routines? What are your lifestyle routines? And it's like, you have to have routines that both are kind of good for you, and then you have to have routines that you're purposely breaking. So it's sort of like, are the routines you have day to day things that make you safer, make it harder for a bad guy to take advantage of you, to kill you. So simple things, like, how do you park your car, whether it's at home? How do you park your car in a parking lot? Where in the parking lot? How do you get in and out of your car? When you get in your car, that is not like a force shield around you. Do you know what I mean? That is not the time to get distracted and doing things. Like, you don't count your money at the bank machine, on and on and on and on. Transitional moments, those life factor moments. It's like, So to me, it all just kind of came down to like, well, it's just routines. What are your routines? Are they good? And then what routines do you have that you need to routinely break so that they don't actually work against you?
Yeah. Actually, can you give us an example of a routine that you want that you have to break? Because I love and it's a great
Yeah. So
analogy.
I think that would be like mainly like habitual patterns. Do you know what I mean? So going the same, like parking in the exact same spot every time you go to the exact same coffee shop at the exact same time every day, like just something that
Yeah.
simple. Like
Yeah.
just don't be so predictable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I think just to expound off that even more, that when you are breaking routines, like when you control follows awareness. So when you have an awareness of these things, and again, 99% of the time, go into the same grocery store or the same coffee, shop and park in the same, relatively the same place all the time. You could say, well, nothing's ever happened to me, and I'm, 53 years old, and it's been fine. Yes, but the idea is that also it is training the brain to break mental maps. If and when there is a threat, you are not on this, sole autopilot
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? So like it
Yeah.
reverts
Yeah.
back to what you said.
Exactly. Yeah.
Make yourself
And that's the
harder to
thing. I
kill.
think even if you do something, if you do the same thing, let's just take that one for example. You park in the exact same spot, the same place every day. It's like, but once every 2 weeks. So 1 out of 14 days, you purposely park somewhere different or go to a different coffee shop. Well, just by doing that once, the other 13 times, like you just alluded to, your mindset's different because you've acknowledged that there's a chance, albeit super small, but you're operating in that condition yellow. I mean, you're not just walking around with blinders on. So you can do the same things, but if you intentionally break it once in a while, it does change the whole mindset for all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I'll throw one in here too, which one of the points that I have written down, and I thought about this earlier, was just, everyone, of course, talks about situational awareness. So you say, okay, well, remain vigilant, maintain and operate under, a consistent level of situational awareness. That's great, but let's go just a step deeper with that. It's not enough to just be aware. Like, why are we trying to be aware? Like, what's the value in being aware? Well, so then you can see things coming. Okay, so you want to see these things coming, and then do what? Like, I'm walking on the train tracks and I'm actively listening and looking and open to any type of feel that might alert me to a train coming. And then I get hit by the train. It's like, but I knew that fucking thing was coming. And it's like, okay, but like that's not really the point. You know what I mean? The awareness
Not
is so
enough.
that you can do something. Yeah, exactly. It's not enough to go, I was aware, I knew this was going to happen.
Who is in trouble?
Yeah, yeah, I knew it was in trouble. I just started running faster, but straight down the tracks. Yeah, but I mean, I knew it was coming, so it gave me the head start. And it's like, but why don't you just get off the tracks? Well, it didn't seem fair. Like, I didn't know I could do that. The point is, what do you do with that awareness? Bad guys are looking for, like, animals that are hunting are looking for a kill. They're not looking for a chase. They're not looking for a fight. They're not looking to expel calories and energy. They're looking for a kill. They need to eat. So bad guys are looking for victims, right? That's the predator optics. They're looking for what they believe are going to be high value and fairly relatively low in energy investment opportunities. So the second you become aware, stack weight on them. I mean, again, it's like, it's kind of a similar concept about changing where you park stuff. But if you think, you see something like, again, it could be something as simple as like, I see these guys up ahead, you cross the street or you step into a business or a restaurant or something, even though I'm late for a meeting, I got to get there. You still take the time to deviate what you're doing, your flight path, your this, your that. You take your phone and get your phone out, or whatever it is. There's a myriad of things that you can do that would start going, okay, if this person is in fact going to attack me, I'm going to make it as hard as possible by doing X, Y, Z. And then if in fact they do decide to pursue that attack, they are now doing extra work. And many, many times that extra work is just not enough for them. They're just like, fuck that. I'll just go to the next person because they're easier. And again, that's kind of the concept. And let me just throw this out, maybe gives you guys a chance to think and reflect on this. But this all came down to this for me. It came down to a conversation over punching. And in a situation, without getting into full tactical details and all that type of stuff, but it came down to a situation where we said, well, why wouldn't I just punch this person at the point? at this point in the training that we're doing? Why wouldn't I just punch him? And my brain right away was like, why would you punch him? Like a punch, context determines content. A punch can be deadly. Men have been beaten to death. They have been punched to death. There's many, many men in this world that punch like a fucking mule kicks. I mean, like very powerful, very devastating. But in the context of life and death, where it is reasonable and you are under the full assumption and belief that this person is attempting to murder you and your family, a punch is so far down the list on effective and violent things to do to somebody, right? Because it takes a tremendous amount of skill set to punch with any type of real accuracy, real power. Like you got to learn the body mechanics, the weight. Like it just takes a lot of fucking training. Again, assuming that who you are facing are experienced violent criminals. Okay? So, and who are not fighting fair. So the idea that, oh, why wouldn't I just punch him right now? Because a punch is ineffective. I'm not saying punches are shitty. I'm not saying, like I said, I've already qualified this, but there are literally tons of things that I can do that are more effective. And so it's like, why are you making this harder on yourself? It's like a guy pulls a gun out, his finger is depressing the trigger, and it's like, you want to, grab his hand and try to control it. Like, Adam, maybe that was a bad analogy, I guess, but the idea being that they are using extreme levels of violence and you are using low levels of passive control. Like, the two don't meet. It's such a weird concept that we have that, again, bad guys have guns and the police should shoot them in the hand and disarm them. Like, there's so fucking, it's such a conflict in my brain, I can't think of it. It doesn't even make sense to me. I'm actually even having a hard time articulating that line of thinking. But maybe that's because, again, I faced violence. I, had people trying to murder you. And it's like, oh man, no, like when someone's trying to kill you, you either, what was the saying? Either, kill him or get busy dying. Like that kind of concept. It's like, we're talking extreme levels of violence here, not antisocial aggression. So that's what kind of spurred this whole thing. And to me, again, it's like people just need to be trained to understand what that really means of like stack the weight onto him. Think like doom on you, have a different mindset to things. Right?
You said something in the setup to the conversation tonight about kind of the conversation that you've had with the client. And I was like, you don't have to fight this guy. You know what I mean? So it's, one of the things that pops in my mind with that is like, so when you take that concept, it's like, listen, like I don't have to consent. Like this is violent. This isn't a fight. This isn't anything like that. So why are we standing there? Like why are we not like you? If we understand we don't have to consent, we don't have to be here, we don't have to participate, so to speak, in terms of what we believe is happening here, then it's like, well, don't stand there. And how many times do we see it? It's like this guy's literally assaulting you. He's about to launch his physical assault upon you, and you're standing in the range and in the kill box of where he has everything at his disposal that he could just rain down on you. So it's like, again, it's like if you think of like, how do I put more weight on him? Well, don't be where he is the most powerful that he could be, the most dangerous version of himself. Is like, take that away from him. Like if there's a car there, go on the other side of the car. Why are we not doing those things? It sounds so simple, and we're like, yeah, like you could use the piece of environment because now like you're not standing where he's deadly. You're standing outside of that, and everybody's like, oh yeah, I know, totally, I'll do that. And then you see videos like, no, there's cars, there's tables, and nobody uses those things. They just stand. And typically, most times, they push all the shit out of the way that would actually save their lives. And then they stand there right where it's the most deadliest version of this individual. And you're like, you don't have to do this. Yeah. Why are you doing that? Like, you have zero obligation to stand in front of this person. Yeah. Make that, like, again, stack the weight on them. Make them come to you. Like, keep going. And if they don't come to you, then keep going. You're good. You
Yeah.
know. So it
Yeah.
just it's that whole, you said it, like we got it, like that narrative of and culture of like, oh, I got to fight this. No, you're being fucking assaulted, my friend. That is a wrong way to think about it. And we know terminology is powerful.
Yeah.
On that
100%.
same
Go
note,
ahead.
one thing I was gonna say before I froze up there was when you were talking, Greg, about the idea of like, why wouldn't I just punch this guy? It's like the thing that just hit me is like, to the person or people who would ask that, it's like, who is this person? Who's this guy in front of you? Like, describe it to me. Paint me the picture. Because the guy that I picture, the guy that I'm preparing for, there's no way you couldn't convince me that me punching him was going to be anywhere near enough. Like what are you preparing for? Do you know what I mean? And to me, I think sometimes that's where people just where they kind of miss some of the point is like when you really break down what level of violence we're talking about preparing for. I think in a way that you can almost easily convince yourself that like something like a punch is just going to be completely ineffective, like you talked about. So yeah, I think sometimes people just they miss that.
Yeah, and I think just to go one step further off it, I think in the beginning a lot of people miss that because they don't know.
Yeah.
That's why when people refer to experiencing combat or violence, mostly this is a term they use in combat, but it's called seeing the elephant.
Yeah.
And it's just that old analogy of five blind guys and each person never the blind since birth, so never seen an elephant, and they let each person touch a different part of the elephant. So five guys describe an elephant very, very differently. You know what I mean? From one touching the body to the trunk to the leg to the tail, they all describe it differently. And then once you've experienced combat, they call it seeing the elephant. So seeing the realities of against it. So their thought about what would work or what I would do is not grounded in anything real, which is kind of that, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. The second thing, though, is that I think people forget. They forget. So when they do train and they're training and, it's all being presented a certain way, it is a constant battle to keep them focused on the standard, or for what we often say, which is to own the problem, which you're constantly having to repaint the picture that this is extreme levels of violence, not a fight, because their brain just keeps going back and they go, well, I've been training now for 6 months and I haven't experienced this. I've been training now for a year and I haven't experienced this, or 2 years, or whatever it is. But it's like, yes, but the day is coming, and when that day comes, you do not want to have that shock value, because that'll end up killing you. So, I think just reiterating the standard to people and helping them own that problem is what makes the difference in these types of scenarios. Because when you really understand everything that we're talking about tonight, look how easy it is for you guys to be like, well, no, man, like, you don't have to consent to this shit. Don't do, like, I mean, right away, we just want to start stacking weight on the bad guy because we're like, this is terrifying. Like, it's terrifying. Like, you're outgunned, outmanned. These guys are premeditated. You know what I mean? They have experience, and it's like, you already get the sense of how much weight is being pushed your way. And so you got to start very quickly. There are no rules. So you start stacking the deck, you start adding weight back to them, right? So yeah, I think 100% that connects back to the standard or owning the problem for sure.
You said something that made me think about, even I could see a little bit of this in myself, and that's why we always have these conversations. But previously and stuff like that, like I could see this elements want to seep in, and it's like it's poisonous. And what I mean by that is like what you said is like, oh, like I've been, guy's been training for 6 months or something like that. But I think it's very poisonous and detrimental to your safety and well-being when you start thinking it's like, well, I have skill sets. I'm not saying do not have confidence in what you're doing and who you like that's okay. But what I'm saying is like when you start to say, well, I have skill sets, therefore the problem is not as big.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's wrong, because there's always going to be bigger people, stronger people, and let's say that you are the biggest and strongest person on the fucking planet, then there's gonna be more people. And then they're gonna have weapons. Like there's always the big overlying problem. And I don't care how good you are
Yeah.
and how strong you are and how fast you are and how long you've been training in whatever you're training. Like there's always a situation where you're not the fucking you're not the like you're facing the problem. So I think it's it's an easy thing that if you kind of stop owning the problem or if you disconnect from that problem, it's very poisonous to have that line of thinking. That is like, well, like you're training over 30 years. I'm 25 years. Dustin's 25 years. And it's like, listen to the conversations. Like, it's not like we're the fucking biggest, baddest motherfuckers on the planet. Like, problems show up to the door. You're the one going to have problems. No, we don't talk that way because we understand that's just going to get people killed, ourselves included. So
Well, everything you just said is really is bang on and really really good, because right away it gets me to think of exactly what we're talking about. Like a lot of people would maybe be like, well, how do you guys train for 25 years, 30 years, and not be the biggest, baddest, or at least among that type of caliber of people? And it's like, listen, when you train that long, like, yeah, we have skill sets and you get very, very proficient. Like, that's the nature of it. But the thing is how much does it really take to become outskilled or outmatched? And I think that is shocking to people of how little it takes to do that. Like,
yeah,
like,
walking out with my daughter, I'm
yeah,
not skilled enough. It's like,
yeah, like I even think of like, well, if I had to move an elephant, you'd be like, move a fucking elephant. And it's like, I could never move a fucking elephant. But I would just, grab a fucking forklift, grab a boom truck, and you can move an elephant effortlessly. Like, and people may go, oh, that's a silly analogy, whatever. Actually, that analogy is bang on, because if you're a violent criminal and you need to rob somebody of something, right? Or you need to, you fucking want to take someone out, how much brain power does it take to outmatch them, outskill them, like to create those circumstances or to create that ingredients where that person is completely outmatched? Like, I know guys that are badasses, jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and type. I can just list, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, whatever, and stabbed in the heart, dead in under 5 seconds. Like, that wasn't hard. Like, he was murdered relatively easily. I know a guy that back in Calgary that was a world professional Thai boxer and like multiple world titles, and got in a fight in a bar and, beat the shit out of the guy. And the guy's friend just pulled the gun out and shot him in both legs. I mean, literally blew out his kneecaps. End of career and almost end of his life. And when he's lying on the ground screaming with his knees have been blown out, the guy could have executed him had he wanted to. So, he's alive only because of the mercy of a bad guy. And many bad guys have no mercy. They would have just ended him. You know what I mean? Like, it just is such a thin line to where you go, oh, I've got so much skill and I'm so tough. Whoop. You're just, people don't get how, and that's why, again, you can train for so many years and go, the problem is massive, people. Like, it's terrifying. The problem is terrifying. Because bad guys are out there thinking that way all the time. They're just ready to stack weight on you in a manner that would shock most people. But because most people don't think this way, they're like, that shit'll never happen. That's not real. And it's like, okay, that's not real. Like, that's how people are being murdered, and that's how they're doing, like, home invasion. Like, this is what they're doing. I got video of in Toronto home invasion. 3 guys just pick a house, roll up, jump out of the car, start kicking the door down. Door flies open. They go in, just shooting. No hesitation, no way. Just walked in shooting. Like, I don't care how big and strong you are. You're outskilled. You're outmatched. You're outgunned. You better have some contingency plans. How do you stack weight on those guys in a fraction of a second like that? And that's why people go, nothing you can do, nothing you can do. No, that's not true. There is stuff you can do. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there's a lot of things you can do to start stacking weight back onto them. But people just, they don't, Again, I don't know. It's like if they haven't experienced it, they don't want to deal with it, and they're going to wait till they experience it. But that's human nature. Is they don't want to deal with a problem. There's a massive problem right now with unprecedented levels of violence in Canada. But majority of people, majority of men, will wait till it happens to them, and then they'll try to do something about it. And by then, it's too late. Like so it's an interesting way to think of this. And again, of course, it takes training. You have to rewire the brain. You have to reprogram your way of thinking. That's the mindset. You have to change the mindset. You have to change the way you're viewing the problem.
And you say it all the time, like the biggest superpower is, and the most powerful thing is your mindset, is your way of thinking. And it's like what I was talking about, like how poisonous it is. Well, that your mindset is what's going to put more weight on that individual than anything else that you're going to do, because it's going to, anything else that you're going to do is going to be supported and supported by your way of thinking and the way of your programming. And it's like, so yeah, like if you're thinking if you're like that, and I think that's how we can train as long as that we have and continue to do, and always like be really getting more attached to the problem and not thinking like we've been doing this for long. Like, it doesn't mean we're not good. It just means that we still like the problem is still ours. Just like it is someone walking in the door day one. It's still our problem. We face the exact same fucking problem, Yeah.
Well, what you just hit is what I was wanting to come out in this conversation, and I felt it pop up right there in that moment. So hopefully people listening to this are having the same kind of aha moment. But my ultimate diagnosis of, a couple days ago when I was working with one of our clients is it just gave me a great reading on the fact that his physical training is ahead of his mental training. And just so people, there's the physical, the mental, the emotional, and you can even wire into the spiritual. But most people enter through the physical door. But the physical door then leads to the mental door, and then the mindset, and then the emotional door comes after. But what happens is his desire to go, well, why wouldn't I just punch him at this point? Like, just hit him with a fucking uppercut. You're physically relying on physical, and again, he's wired it because he's a really strong dude, great shape, all that type of stuff. Very, very physically, dominant. But so his physical wants to fucking smash, which is a reflection of the mindset. If this person, what if there's two of these guys, three of the guys, with this guy's armed? Like, your physical, and then of course your emotional of like, fuck you and let's go and I want to smash you. Those things are higher than the mindset. Because at the end of the day, the big takeaway off this is when you adding weight, like we're talking about the analogy we're using, it's purely a mindset. It's a reflection of how you think. The individuals that would be listening to this, that this resonates very deeply and very clearly, you have a really good mindset. That mindset is to think evil. That mindset is if you're not cheating, you're not trying. That mindset is like, again, this is motherfuckers coming to execute me and my family. Fuck doom on you. Fuck you. Like, this is not just a physical fight that you're coming to. This is all hands on deck, and that's led by a mindset. And so that is a way of thinking. And that way of thinking we've been cultivating for 25 years, 30 years, which is like, again, it's like these are bad fucking people. They are plotting, determined to fucking get you. And there's nothing fair about how they're going to get you. There's no honor in what they're doing. They just simply want to succeed at what their mission is, which is to fucking, destroy. Which is that's what violence is about. It's about fucking destruction. So your mindset, you have to be the motherfucker that has a doom on you mindset. And guys that are going, man, why didn't I just punch him right at that point? That's not a doom on you mindset. Do you know what I mean? That evil motherfucker, you didn't notice, right? But look at his right hand. And he's got a fucking razor blade in his right hand and he slashes you across the throat. And 90 seconds later, you're dead. Like, that's an evil mindset. Well, you have to have a doom on you mindset. And nowhere in the doom on you mindset, when you're facing that type of life and death situation, are you thinking, I'm going to punch this guy? It's just, it's too ineffective. It's just too ineffective. There's so many other things that you can do that are far more effective in the defense of your life. Because again, I'm not looking to stay there and fight. If I can, inflict enough damage to get away, great. If I can't get away and you continue to be a threat, then I have to potentially take life to preserve life. Nobody wants to do it, but that's at the end of the day. If you cannot eliminate that threat, if it continues to be a threat, then you have to do what you need to do, right? So the mindset is huge, and that's what this conversation will reveal in a lot of people. Is if this isn't resonating clearly and deeply, then and your brain is continually pushing forward. Well, yeah, but you could do this, do that, do this, do that. Either A, you're not understanding the context of which we're talking. So you don't own the problem. You don't have your standard's different than our standard, or your physical is higher than your mindset as it pertains to violence, right? So again, the friend of ours that I was talking about that got murdered, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, Thai boxing, like tough as fucking nails. Bounced for years, like just tons of practical experience, tons of competition experience. And the individual that murdered him was a short, fat guy who'd never fought a day in his life, but was a violent individual and just pulled a knife on stab him. I truly believe that one of the biggest contributing factors with the context of how that all went down was he didn't have the right mindset. He had a different mindset, and that mindset was not a doom on you mindset. He didn't understand how to think evil, and so he never saw it coming. So he was incapable of having the right type of situational awareness because his mindset wasn't tuned into violence. It was tuned into aggression. You know what I mean? Fighting, conventional, and that's a different animal. So, he just didn't know how to add weight. And so it cost him his life ultimately. Okay, Dustin, I know you got booted off, so you missed a chunk of the conversation, but is there anything else that you guys have on this kind of take? Because, it's not something we can go super deep on. Like I said, the reveal here was, this is a reflection of your mindset. What I would say, and this is probably kind of my last point that I have on this, but this whole podcast is about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a podcast, it's tough to change. You can't train people physically, strategically and tactically that well through a podcast, this type of medium. What you can do, though, is you can put out a tremendous amount of food for thought. You can put out a lot of things and unpack a lot of things in ways that inspires people to question the way they think, expand the way they think, ultimately maybe even explore and change the way that they think, or at least see things from a different perspective. That's the power of this type of podcast. And the mindset, mentally preparing people. If you can change someone's mindset, you're going to change that man forever, and you're going to move them. To me, it's the biggest jump that you get on the dial to weaponizing them is when you start affecting the change of the mindset. The physical and stuff is easy to teach people, but again, they can be physically doing it, they can intellectually understand it, but it doesn't mean they have the mindset. The mindset is a different thing, and that's what this analogy was meant to inspire. And I would, if you've heard a few of our episodes, go back and start at the beginning and saturate and go through this and listen to the mindset, because saturation is one of the most powerful tools you have. And we're 124 episodes deep. That's a lot of saturation. That will start to impact your mindset one way or the other. And so to me, it's just, that's the value in what we're doing each week with this, is to just keep pushing people's mindset and just forcing them to think and expand and grow and question and kind of go from there. So I don't know. Anything else on this, you guys, that you want to
You
get
know,
down
just
right
a really simple comment. It goes back to a podcast we did before. I don't even know what season it was in, but we just talked a lot about how much risk are you willing to assume? And I think today's podcast just really ties to that really well, because like the sharper your mindset, the more you grow your mindset. It's because you're just not willing to assume any more risk than you have to. You know, to Brad's point here tonight, you know, why are we still doing this? Well, because we want to assume that much less risk. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every single time I train, I'm lowering the amount of risk I'm assuming day to day.
Yeah.
And I can never get that low enough because the stakes are too high. The cost of being wrong is way too high for me. So I have to keep this. No matter how good I get, I have to keep going. Always.
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I think no, just even just the analogy of like stacking weight onto them. Don't take it off. If people take and just take a second to think about just that concept of like every time like they find themselves something or they're thinking about something or like whatever, it's like how do I just do that? Put more weight onto that. Like I know it is a big subject. Like there's a lot of ways to do that, but I think it's a very simple. How do I put weight on people? Like how do I make the onus go on them in all these different areas when you start talking about violence? And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of different sections to it, but it's like, well, how do I do that? And if you all constantly think about like, well, I'm going to make you got to carry all the weight. I'm not going to carry it for you.
Yeah.
I think that is going to get, if you take that concept and you take ownership of it, that's going to put you light years ahead of just other people's way of thinking, because people have a hard time thinking that way because they're not programmed that way. They've been conditioned otherwise.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I love it. I think hopefully the podcast, this episode in particular, will spark that and get people to really think about the mindset and to desire wanting to develop a mindset, like a protect our based mindset. And this podcast is one of the ways which you can saturate and start to do that. But there's many other things, many other different magazines and organizations and videos and all that kind of stuff. But it is absolutely worth that investment to start doing that. I was going to save this, and we'll probably do this on a podcast in the new year. But so I'll put this out there now, and you guys can jot it down in your notes for future reference. But I was going to ask you guys just, what are the best days? What does a really good day or your best day of training look like? And I'll let you reflect on that, and my answer ties into tonight. My best training days are always the days that I find like where I fail, meaning like I find a chink in the armor. It's like my mindset gets complacent. You start thinking like, oh man, I've been doing this 30 years. Like I know quite a bit. Like I'm doing okay. I'm pretty good. I could do this. I can do that. Those terms of I can do this and I can do that. The days that we all have bad days. You all have days. When you have the right people around you training, they know how to push you. They know how to find your weaknesses. They know how to. They basically know how to make you fail. And when they can push you physically and cause you to fail, or mentally or emotionally, it always comes back to this mindset reboot, where you kind of just you really scale things back and you start just going, listen, I have to think simpler, think more violently. I have to, you're outgunned and outmanned. You have to have more doom on you mindset, because the second, it's just so easy when you start training to start letting the physical, because you have these skill sets and you can move and do these things, to start letting the physical lead. And then, and the mindset takes a back seat to the physical, where I think for violence, the mindset. So the days that that you really fail and you get frustrated and you're like, fuck, that wouldn't have been good. Like that would have cost me. And oh my God, like Dustin just said, the price of failure is too high. It always comes back to mindset for me. It's always like a kick in the balls, and it grounds your mindset and being like, listen, this is not a game. And it's like the second you start thinking you're somebody, you're going to find out you're nobody. You know, and that's what we have that saying. If you fuck around, you won't be around. And so that to me are always I love those reboots because I'm always grateful that it happened in training, not in combat. Lessons learned versus lessons earned. I like it when I learn a lesson versus when I have to earn it through battle scars. You know what I mean? Like loss of something significant and real, which could be my life or the life of my family. So to me, it just ties back into always my best days training are the days when weaknesses or complacency is exposed in my mindset. So, anyways, future I'll ask you guys that, and I'll get your take on it. We'll go from that. But all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up again. I want to thank everybody. This is the end of season 3 for us of the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's just been a nice, slow, steady growth for us, which is exactly what we want. We're reaching the people that we want to reach, which are really good men that want to weaponize and protect. We're again at unprecedented levels of Canada. A national conversation is happening on Canadians' rights to protect themselves. We're in the midst of a massive, just a softening of the rights of Canadians to defend ourselves, and really in the sense of the tools, obviously with firearms and different things. It's a lot of things, man. The genie is out of the bottle. Pandora's box has been opened, with the breakdown of the criminal system and on parole. Like, just Canada's gotten so soft on crime that a change of government it's going to be very tough to put the genie back in the bottle. Once Pandora's box has been opened, it's going to take a lot to fix the problems that we currently have. Things are going to get worse before they get better, and we just again need more and more good men to weaponize to want to be able to protect themselves, their family, and their property from assault, violence, and theft separate from the police. I mean, because the governments won't protect us. The police are absolutely and completely helpless to be able to stop this situation, and it's going to be this way for the foreseeable future. So, anyways, I appreciate your guys' time and energy invested in over this 3rd season. For everybody watching, listening, we appreciate the support. Thank you so much. So we will be back in the new year, 2025, with season 4 of the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to actually change some things up, do a bunch of different things in the new year. So I'm just really, really looking forward to pushing this all forward and keep the movement going. So that's it, everybody. Until next time, stay safe, stay weaponized. Chat again soon, everybody.